the one that I had presented signed has, is similar to the one that I had in the past with a couple of significant exceptions. There is no credit for the 3 hours that we had done a couple of years ago for time. And there was an addition added that staff and council can direct on, that it would allow council members to request services. Now, that being said, I want to make it clear that I'm always flexible on billing those type of things. I don't bill every second, every minute, but if it's an extended conversation or takes some sort of work, legal research or something, yes, the city would be billed for those types of things. The difference between what Mr. Block had presented is that has a limitation on, I believe that the mayor can request things, the clerk, the administrator, or I think that's council action. So the addition that I had made to mine was council member requests. Now that's something that certainly I have no hard feelings on. It's just you need to provide some direction to staff and whatever else. The rate is the same. Malpractice insurance is the same. My employment is at will. You can discharge me anytime that you feel appropriate. And you're just obligated for the services that were rendered. There's no other clauses. That's the significant difference.
Mr. Mayor, the concern that staff would have from an administrative point of view is trying to keep some type of reasonable cost control lid on what we spend on legal. And already, and through no fault of Terry's, because when somebody asks him a question, he's going to get you an answer. But he's dealing with issues that should be taken to the administrator's office first. If it's a legal matter, then it will be referred to the, it's appropriate to go to legal. But we can't have questions floating into the attorney that appear to be non-legal questions and that are costing the taxpayers additional money. And it will start to add up. Kathy, I know you had asked me about payment on some claims, and we're not trying to embarrass anyone. We're just trying to get a handle on what do you want to do functionally that will keep things from getting out of hand. And I think the language that we had with Terry before seemed workable, unless you feel otherwise, seemed to work in the last go around, and that's why we suggested it again this year.
It doesn't make any difference to me how you want to do it. I'm going to be very clear. I will always maintain the discretion that if I see something that I think is inappropriate or something that is being done that isn't appropriate, I will certainly bring that to the attention of the appropriate people, either your city administrator or the council or someone else. It's not as if I'm going to be acting only at the direction of staff or council. It's 99.9% of the time that's exactly what happens. But if something occurs that is out of the ordinary or that I feel is inappropriate or I have a question on, I would certainly reserve the right to raise that issue as a question and look into those matters. So that is not uncommon. The council always has the ability to question bills. We've never had an issue on any question when they would bring up on an invoice or anything else. It's never been a problem.
I do have difficulty though trying to figure out what fund should pay for some of these services when it just says, that Terry's answering a question from a certain council person. I can't always tell what it is. And then if there is work that's been done or a document provided, that should be work paper of the city. It should be on file here at the city somewhere, not in person, right? I mean, if it's for council action or for under council direction, then that work product should be here somewhere. And I need to know which fund is going to pay for these expenses, so it needs to be either very clear and sometimes it's possible that the question can be answered here, simply answered here, and not have to be spending Terry's time and effort.
Which contract are we going to go with? it seems as though there's a conflict someplace. I'm not exactly sure where it lays, but it would seem that mere policy on the part of the council would preclude most of this happening.
I would agree if you.
You know, like
if
you
had a
said,
policy,
99.9% of the time, if we have a reasonable policy that council follows, certainly staff isn't gonna go and seek legal advice unless they need it. And we shouldn't be doing it, I don't believe either, independently, just because it's available. You know?
And I think
There may be certain circumstances where it's required, but I would think they would be very, very few. And maybe that can be spelled out in some policy.
We had that very discussion in that vein. Certainly you do need that policy. And certainly if council members aren't satisfied with the response that they might have received out of City Hall or something, they certainly could come. But certainly it shouldn't be a routine matter.
Okay.
Where were the expenses subtracted from what fund before, if there was any questions?
Well, let's say it was an issue dealing with the levies or something, you know, then it would go to the levies. Levy. If it's a question about the police department, it's allocated to the police department. So I think, you know, she tries to allocate where there's resources appropriate to pay the research or questions that are being done. Often we'll ask him about a planning issue. You know, we're going to give it to the project that we're on, if it's the improvements or the assessments. I'm sure that's what we're looking at.
Like the sign ordinance, you know, that'll come out of planning because that's out of planning and zoning. But I haven't had issues, I haven't had questions, because nobody ever went to Springer and asked him any questions. So I don't know if it's just because Terry's handy, or,
Very likable.
but, oh, okay.
Well,
But, you know, nobody ever asked Springer anything, so I never had to wonder about it.
It cuts both ways. You know, I certainly want to encourage people to stop in and ask a simple question. That's fine. But if it gets to the point where it's an extended discussion on issues, well, that's part of the workday, and that needs to be built. You know, it's just maybe it is a policy issue for you to handle, but 90% of them probably could be handled talking to Wendy.